What was Kerouac's artistic thesis? What was he trying to impart? The answer is, in my opinion, that Kerouac was a spiritual writer, and that above all, he attempted to make beautiful and even show the holiness of the worst of us. In this reading, he says, "It always makes me proud to love the world somehow. Hate is so easy compared." And now it all makes sense. I first met Jack Kerouac in my early 20s, as most young men do, ever full of passion and hope and hunger for the future. Before the academic advisor / career machine says, "Hello, hi there, hi. Appreciate your enthusiasm, love your energy, you're gonna be great, but can we get a little serious for a second here, a little realistic? What are you going to do with your life?" Because that is who Kerouac is in your 20s. A rage against the machine of capitalism, the Dharma bumps, a veneration of the holy self and hedonism on the road, a humanized allegorical argument on behalf of the civil rights and free love movements, the subterraneans, a glorification of alcoholism and hoboism and confusion. Big Sur. To an unsubtle mind, like mine at the time, after reading the Kerouacian canon, one resurfaces evangelical for the efficacy of spontaneous travel, sex, Zen, art, loyalty, and equally and vocally against any system or any person who tells you any version of "don't do that." Your favorite of his quotes: "Live, travel, adventure, bless, and never be sorry." Kerouac in this reading is a motivational speaker. Who, pray, he asks, should stand in our way? And isn't he right? Isn't there something magnificent about howling into the early morning, chain smoking with a beautiful girl or a beautiful guy in your arm, skipping down the jazz streets of your wherever city, quoting Hemingway below the stars? Isn't there something almost, let's call it divine, about such joyful nowness? This is why young hearts and young artists love Kerouac, which is enough. Then after even a tertiary study of his historical place in literature, our minds spout off saying that he was also a stylistic revolutionary. He reinvented spontaneous prose, challenging the form of the novel and therefore almost single-handedly defining an entire movement, or dare I say, even a generation of literature. Go to the Beat Museum on Broadway in North Beach in San Francisco. Smoke in the alleys between City Lights bookstores and Jack Kerouac Street, and talk shop with the locals and the modern hobos who know him best. Read his best lines carved into the stones of the Lowell of his youth. Get a tattoo. The only ones for me are the mad ones. It'll look great, I promise. His deification now complete. And listen, I still get it. I get it because there's a part of me that still believes in this legend. A proper night of revelry or a slightly dangerous week of travel is important, is it not? We are here, after all, alive. We can't all be pious monks all the time, nor should we be, right? Sure. Though Kerouac, after a 5th or 6th or especially 10th reading, or after a decade of experience in the real world, especially for business owners, he often comes to eventually sound and feel a bit self-indulgent. In this reading, he is at best an observant poet and at worst a misogynist. Who is he taking care of? What is his purpose? Who is on his payroll? How is this, actually giving value to the world? This new, older, more responsible version of you, often in your 30s, begins to sound like your parents berating your old self for having not realized sooner, reminding you that no, the universe does not revolve around you, and no, the world does not owe you anything, and also, yes, you should treat women with respect, and also you should stop drinking so much, and you should do something for society instead of only yourself. Your new, older self now reads another famous Kerouac quote, "I had nothing to offer anyone except my own confusion," and begins to agree with him. And listen, no matter your opinion, it's objective that he checks off all the requisite boxes for great artist. Even if you believe he's a self-obsessed misogynist who stole his so-called style from Thomas Wolfe and James Joyce, he did define a medium for basically a generation, was artistically relevant, was a brilliant wordsmith, was artistically skilled, and had a thesis for life, was culturally relevant. So I'm not arguing that we forget Kerouac. We won't forget him anytime soon. Though a better question, and one that is relevant to all art and artists and humans who edify their heroes at large, should we forget him? Does the fact that Elon Musk fired his decade-long assistant because she asked for a raise counter what we can learn from him? Should the fact that Steve Jobs was a self-admitted terrible father stop us from using the iPhone? Should the fact that Michael Jackson and Woody Allen, you see where I'm going with this. As artists, art critics, and experiencers of especially great art, it's natural to revisit a work over and over and over again, each with a new understanding. The art itself in this way is but an artifact from which we glean meaning. Even if the piece does not change, we do. Time passes, culture evolves, context matters. We learn more about the artists themselves. And so naturally, with every new viewing or next reading, the layers unpack themselves into a more coherent thesis. Art in this way is less a monologue and more a conversation. At first, we ask Kerouac what he wants, and he answers travel and love and freedom, and we love that in our 20s. But this was me taking a road trip all across the country, just like him after college. This was me visiting his gravestone in Lowell. This was me reading his book Trieste in Mexico. Great things are not accomplished by those who yield to trends and fads and popular opinion, he wrote. But then we ask him again a few years later, and he says this time that he doesn't care about anyone but himself, especially not the girls he casually sleeps with, and that we shouldn't pay any attention to his madness. He says that he doesn't know anything about anything. This caused me to not read him for years, disappointed in him like a hero father who you later found out cheated on your mom. Don't touch me. I'm full of snakes, Kerouac wrote. Though it wasn't until I spent time in San Francisco, just a few blocks from the Beat Museum and City Lights bookstore, that I truly unpacked and then forgave, and now I think, therefore finally understand the enigma that is Kerouac, and really all great thinkers. I finally married the two sides of the coin. There's a meta lesson here, namely that location and geography match, that if you desire to feel and then understand an artist, any artist, be they a painter, director, writer, or visionary business person, then it's best to use all of your senses in the process, which is what I did in San Francisco. If my wife and I took a walk to the bookstore, had dinner, or went to the park, we would walk past these iconic places, the Columbus Broadway intersection where the Beats made their home. And you know what's there? What is mostly there? Sure, there are the famous bars, Naked Lunch, and fancy restaurants, Quince, and world-class murals, the New Sun Hong Kong. But there are also strip clubs, and cigar bars, and jazz clubs, and hobo hangouts, and homeless junkies shooting up, smelling of urine, sleeping on the sidewalks, wrists ever outstretched, asking for change. And for any cultured literary historian or typical art critic who is well-read and well-educated, for any business owner who has a white-collar professional job, the type who travels and goes to museums and reads, dare I say, magazines like Art and Food or The New Yorker, the juxtaposition will be, I promise, stark. Difficult even, because it is. You come to have a coffee at Cafe Trieste and leave wondering, what is happening to the world? San Francisco at the time of this episode is undoubtedly going through a crisis of mental health and homelessness. And no more is this apparent than where Kerouac famously made San Francisco his home. And so as a cultured / educated / well-read writer and philosopher and business owner, in that I was faced to come down from the high tower of theory every single day and stare at the microcosmic realities of social stratifications right in the face, and therefore in at least having to attempt to unpack this larger question, how do we solve homelessness and drug addiction with compassion and efficacy, I finally came to understand the brilliance of Kerouac. What was Kerouac's artistic thesis? What was he trying to impart? The answer is, in my opinion, that Kerouac was a spiritual writer, and that above all, he attempted to make beautiful and even show the holiness of the worst of us. In this reading, he says, "It always makes me proud to love the world somehow. Hate is so easy compared." And now it all makes sense. You must understand that his books are all full of prostitutes, heroin-addicted musicians, maniacs, floundering, and mental illness, alcoholic hobos, the homeless, and the forgotten, which our hearts, when we are young, tell us to forgive and to help those downtrodden in our society, that we should march and provide for, etc. Though then our conservative brains tell us to stay safe and that it's their fault anyways, isn't it? Where is their personal responsibility? We all make our own choices, don't we? Enter stage left, smiling Kerouac, a spiritual figure, now arguing against both our hearts and our brains in saying things like, the fact that everyone in the world dreams every night ties all mankind together. And so I finally answer the question, should we still care about Kerouac? Yeah, but not because he invented spontaneous prose, because the truth is, he really didn't. Nor because he most perfectly exemplified the American dream, neither its faults nor its boldness, but rather because way down the rabbit hole, like any great artist, Kerouac was willing to do what most of us are unwilling to do, experience and then articulate the deep experiences of life, especially in the darkest corners of our society. In this reading, he says things like, I want to work in revelations, not just spin silly tales for money. I want to fish as deep down as possible into my own subconscious in the belief that once that far down, everyone will understand me because they are the same that far down. This fundamentally is Kerouac's thesis in a sentence, because we are all the same that far down. And it's a good thesis, an important one that is applicable at all times, in all decades, both for the owners and the stock boys alike. If you go down deep enough, we are all the same. A message we should soon not forget. I hope that helped. Thanks for listening. Cheers.